You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Hey, welcome to Mission Log Engaged. Did you miss us? I know some of you did.
I missed you.
I missed you, Norma. I love doing this, and we took a little time off for the Thanksgiving break, but now we're back, and everything's shifted by a week. But we'll come and go. That's what we can do. It's our show. We can do that.
We have an orb that allows us to time travel.
the
So we
the
can use
orb
that
of the orb of listener feedback.
That's exactly
That's what they forgot to put in the show.
Ah,
But yeah, hey, you're catching Engage, and this is the show where we get to engage with you, our listeners. You send us email and comments, and then we read them and we answer them, and sometimes just walk away with our tails tucked between our legs. We'll see what happens this week on the
or
show.
no tails at all.
Or no tails at all. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. And today we're going to kick things off with an email from Brad. Norm, would you do the honors?
Sure thing. This is from Brad. Hey, John and Norm. Couple of things since I am again playing catch up with my podcasts. Now that I'm working from home, I don't have nearly as much time in the car listening to podcasts. I have gone from 2 tanks of gas per week to 1 tank a month.
I would like that problem. Yeah.
That's a good problem,
Yeah.
gas price wise.
Mm.
I also just listened to Badda-Bing, Badda-Bang, and I wanted to bring up your and Cisco's discussion of blacks in 1962 Las Vegas. As a black man, I can see and understand the discussion, but we have to be careful about making these broad statements, and I won't do this because this person did that. Taken to extremes, that is how cancel culture works. Everyone, you, me, our founding fathers, and so forth, has character flaws. As a Christian, there is a single exception to that rule. Smiley face. The problem is that taking this, quote, I won't do this because this person has this character flaw, unquote, mindset leads to cancel culture. For instance, some may say that because JG's character in Far Beyond the Stars is named Rittenhouse, we should cancel DS9. Or Star Trek should be canceled because Gene was allegedly a womanizer and had constitutional inability to leave a script alone. Is that a reason not to watch the entire body of Star Trek because Gene was involved? I don't think so. In some cases, I think that some character flaws in general can also lead to redemption. Taken to its logical conclusion, it would lead to the cancellation of everything, and we would not be allowed to enjoy anything. So I think that Cisco's reaction to 1962 Las Vegas was probably correct, but getting involved with the Vic plan was more correct. Again, just my 2 centicreds, Brad.
Brad, that is such a good email and such an interesting perspective, and it raises a lot of thoughts in my head. But I'm going to start from the bottom up and just say that let's see, just in his last sentence there, the reaction was correct, but getting involved with the Vic plan was more correct. I
Mhm.
really like that perspective. That just kind of boils it down. But I think, Brad, you're hitting on a couple of things that I was really interested in with this episode, and that is when it came out, you could just look at it as the character's experience and how do we look at a time. Now, here we are 20 plus years after the episode aired, and we have terms like cancel culture in the popular lexicon, and we're all trying to figure out, is that a thing? What is it? What are the boundaries? How do we deal with it? So we're looking at the show in a different context now than we did 20 years ago. Um, and I'm glad that that conversation is happening. Absolutely. I didn't expect that it would necessarily come out of this show, but it did. Um, the other thing that I think is really important here is that there's a little bit of a distinction in my head anyway between a time and a person. I agree that I think that we can't just immediately throw out the baby with the bathwater on everything that we analyze. By we, I mean as a present day culture. I think we can't just throw out everything. And you mentioned Gene, and certainly he was a person with flaws, and those flaws are well known, and people still accept, well, okay, the work is the work, which is also created by a huge team of people. And if you look at that in retrospect, you can just go like, well, the work is really valuable, and we get to critique it, and we get to be fans of it. And by the way, don't be like that person.
Mhm.
Or at least don't express, those same kind of flaws given the opportunity do not express those kinds of flaws. Cisco's position is a little bit different, though, because you're talking about a time and an entire culture. And when you talk about going into the past, well, any single slice of the past that you want to analyze, you will find problems. You will find problems in the 1960s. You will certainly find problems in the 1860s.
Mhm.
You will find problems in the 1980s. Um, so, I think it's still a worthwhile thing to look at a period and go, there's something of value there. That there's, whether music or culture or style or ideas or people who I want to recognize and maybe emulate, but it is also valuable to recognize the negative traits that come along with it. And for a guy like Cisco, again, who lived this in Far Beyond the Stars, he gets to have that very visceral reaction to, that was not a good time, you know? What do you think, Norman? I feel like this is a conversation that could go on an hour. you
Yeah,
know?
the interesting thing about, the aspect of cancel culture is kind of taking a look at it from the goal of what that is or what that wants to be. And I think that I've talked to people about, if you have a particular issue with a particular actor, writer, director who influenced a certain body of work that ends up or is one of your favorite pieces of work
Hmm.
ever that has inspired you, but because certain things have revealed certain, skeletons in the closet
Hmm.
within these productions, does it change how that film or how that show or how that piece of work inspired you? You were
It
inspired.
can. It
Yeah.
can. I mean, and this is a great question about, separating the artist from the art. And I
Mhm.
think every situation and every person, there's going to be a different line of
Right.
demarcation where you
Right.
can or can't accept it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the difficult thing right out there right now because things that inspire you, you believe in that wholeheartedly. You expose your soul to this work, this inspiration. Then all of a sudden, there's an element in it that that taints it from the
Yeah.
very beginning. But then again, can you find it within yourself to be able to say, you know what? So many other people, you're right, have touched this work.
Yeah.
Sure, it was like in Gene's case, it was the impetus of Gene, but at the very beginning of Star Trek, it said created by Gene Roddenberry, not every single second produced by Gene Roddenberry.
Sure.
So there are other people in there. There's Gene Kuhn.
Hmm.
There's Mark, Matt Jeffries.
Hmm.
There's DC Fontana. Like all these people working
Yeah.
behind the scenes to make this show.
I think it's also helpful, though, to think that, okay, not all of those people are perfect either. So if we
Right.
start with a baseline understanding that everybody is flawed, everybody is tainted in some way, then, if everybody is, then nobody is. Again, I'm not excusing people's bad behavior, but we might just do a little better realizing that we're talking about a spectrum of behaviors here. And maybe, again, your line is going to be someplace different than somebody else's. I love this conversation. Like I said, I think this could go on for hours and hours. Brad, thank you very much for bringing this up and sharing your perspective. If you would like to share with us, youtube.com/RoddenberryProd is where you'll find the Mission Log Engage playlist. You can email us, missionlog@roddenberry.com, Facebook and Twitter @MissionLogPod. And remember, we may engage with you on the air.